107.5 The Game.
Sponsored by Love Chevrolet. We will never charge above MSRP or take advantage of you with add-ons. I-26 at Harbison and at lovechevy.com. Find new roads. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Pearson Fowler.
This has been in the works for a while. We're really excited to officially have the Gamecock Central Hour.
Chris Clark.
And JJ has accepted an invite to the Senior Bowl already, which is awesome, the Reese's Senior Bowl.
And Wes Mitchell.
I think he's well above 200 into like the 210 range. A dude in the weight room, too, like from a strength standpoint.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
Minute after 11 o'clock, welcome back into the Extra Point, the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, Preston Thorne still here with us. Lots of Gamecock football to get into today. Wes and Chris were out there at practice with me yesterday. Some South Carolina offensive players are, I guess, in the facility probably right now, speaking to the media that are there. We'll get some sound from the South Carolina players, offensive players today. A couple of offensive linemen, Lavoisier Carroll, Xavier Leggett, a few other players that are scheduled to speak throughout the course of the morning here. We'll get some sound from them throughout the course of the day. Also got a poll question for you. And actually, I'll go ahead and reset that as we get Wes and Chris into the fold here. Guys, it's Tuesday, the sort of quarterly breakdown of the schedule. We're just going to be rolling these out on Tuesday. Last week it was, what will Carolina's record be in their first three games? Now it is, what will Carolina's record be in their second three games? That is home against Charlotte, home against SC State, and on the road against Kentucky. About 45 minutes left to vote, and now 69% of the voters said Carolina will be 3-0 in that stretch. Wes? Preston and I have just like the running joke that every year Carolina's going to beat Kentucky, and every year for most of the last decade, they haven't. But this is the year, right?
Well, and it's so weird, man. For the decade prior, you could just count on it. It was even, and there were a lot of close games in there, like some highly contested games, and South Carolina would find a way to beat Kentucky. It's been very much the opposite the last 10 years, which I think is very difficult for South Carolina fans to accept. It kind of reminds me, it's kind of the opposite of when South Carolina went on that run and started like beating teams that they weren't used to beating. It was like Tennessee fans didn't accept that South Carolina was like better than them. Like, well, we were still better in 1998, and it's like it's hard to accept it as a fan base, and I think it's very similar here. It is interesting. I feel like I look at schedules like, all right, that's a game, your team should win. That's a game your team probably loses, and then you obviously have the swing games. It's kind of interesting going into a season when everybody's like down and nobody's really excited. If you did that poll, all the swing games probably go the wrong way. Like maybe final Muschamp season, everybody's just like, oh, this is going to go bad. This is going to go bad. The swing games go one way, and right now everybody's pumped. Win a bowl game, everybody's feeling good. Spencer Rattler's here. In your poll so far, the swing games have been decidedly Gamecock favored. Yeah. So in this case, 2-1 with the first part of the first quarter would be a very positive outlook. In this case, most of the fans going 3-0 would be like the positive version of these three games, I think. So
5-1 going into the open week with a loss at home against Georgia, which is
everybody is happy.
That's spectacular. Simply spectacular. I want to circle back around to kind of what that would mean as people are voting right now. But you said something very interesting. Tennessee fans never got used to Carolina being better than them, which they were for a good stretch. But now Tennessee's back to being better than Carolina. Is that just coincidence, or is there something about the expectation that a fan base and a program kind of collectively sets for itself that you will get back there? And I guess I'm asking you in a roundabout way. Carolina fans refuse to acknowledge that Kentucky's a better football program. Isn't that good? Because the second that you concede that, Kentucky's better than you and they have you. Right now, like Carolina fans, as soon as they get back on top of Kentucky, they're like, oh yeah, we've always been here.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting existential here for a moment.
That's what we do.
Yeah, you should feel that way, I think, if you're South Carolina. And here's the thing. We like to talk about, Carolina fans, Georgia, can South Carolina get back to the point of competing for the East, et cetera, et cetera. to me, the goal for the next step is you got to, South Carolina lost to Missouri last year.
I don't remember anything from that game.
You've got to beat Missouri. You've got to beat Kentucky. You've got to, these swing games that most fans would probably kind of swing into your direction. You got to win more of those than you lose. I think and I know we're trying to go 3 by 3. I sort of look at the first 6 and I say, all right, can you lose to Georgia and then split the 2 swing games? In my eyes, Arkansas and Kentucky. 5-1 is very, very extremely positive.
Yeah.
But even 4-2, you're probably feeling pretty good. So I think, I can't remember. I guess I had South Carolina beating Arkansas. I actually would probably flip the 2 now that I'm thinking about it and say, maybe they are 1-2 after the first 3, but maybe they can rebound and go 3-0 on the next 3.
So even in that discussion and thinking about that, Pearson, do you have Arkansas or Kentucky as the better program?
I think Kentucky's a better program right now, but Arkansas is a better team this year. If I can give you a really squirrely hedge.
I think I agree with that, though.
Okay. So it's just cognitive dissonance that I see the statistics.
Mm-hmm.
I understand statistics. I believe people should use these statistics to inform their decisions. But I cannot get over the idea that we're not going to beat Kentucky this year. I don't know why I can't do that.
Every year it's shocking for
It's
Carolina
always
fans.
like, oh, really? Did we lose? How'd we do that?
Again? Not really. Well, let me ask you this then. I like how you frame that. If we're kind of accepting the premise that Kentucky's a better program but Arkansas is a better team, which one of those games is a better win for Carolina?
Oh.
And they're both on the road.
I think Arkansas would be met by the media with more attention and as a bigger win. But man, from a program standpoint and a program building standpoint, just having another loss to Kentucky is ugly. So I think I'd actually have to go Kentucky. Like South Carolina needs to be Kentucky. I say that every year.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this. I was talking to somebody. I think I even mentioned this on the air. I believe these are the games that maybe having somebody dynamic like Spencer Rattler at quarterback can be a difference maker. If Spencer Rattler is, at quarterback last year, or even I would say if South Carolina had a healthy like Luke Doty doing what some of the things that we knew he could do coming in athletically,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they lose a game where Kentucky turns the football over. What was it? It was 3 times.
Yeah.
In their own territory.
Well, 2 times in their territory. I think there was a punt return, but Carolina started 3 drives in plus territory and came away with like -6 points.
And that was the game where I remember watching Doty and saying he just does not have the explosiveness I'm used to seeing from his legs. And, I think Carolina ended up going down 10-0, then they scored to start the second half. But then Kentucky was trying to give them that game.
It was like 17-13 or 17-10 final. I mean, it was sad. All you needed was like a score.
Yeah, you needed a late score.
And they tried to give it to you.
Yeah, on a short field at home.
3 short fields.
Yeah, I don't think South Carolina loses that. But you can't count on them turning the ball over. Like they gifted it.
Yeah.
And you didn't take advantage.
I said at the time, Carolina would not have a worse loss than that Kentucky game last year. I stand by that, even though like blowouts against Texas A&M and Clemson probably feel worse. That Kentucky loss that's one of the worst
because
losses.
It was there.
That's the worst loss since Carolina blew that 4th quarter lead against Florida down in Gainesville, that one of those Muschamp years when they just couldn't stop the run. That was terrible. It was terrible. Preston, Arkansas or Kentucky?
Arkansas.
Okay.
Because in my brain, we are supposed to beat Kentucky.
Yeah.
And somehow in my mind, I still feel like that's an expected win. So,
but that's good. That's good. To come back, do you believe in the self-fulfilling prophecy of football programs?
As in, like how you see yourself is how you will be, something like that?
Yeah, like Tennessee fans were right not to admit that Carolina had passed them in the SEC because now Tennessee's right back in front.
No, they weren't right. They were wrong because the statistics and everything proved that they were wrong year after year.
Okay.
And I would even push back and say that they beat us last year, but they're not. One is not. 2 to 3 is a trend.
It is 3, though, now, isn't it?
Is it 3 in a row for Tennessee?
It's 2, isn't it?
No, because it was last year the blowout. The year before was when the punt bounced off Cam Smith's leg.
All right.
And then the year before that was Callaway, and who's the other receiver they had? And they went max protect and just bombed. It was like 41-20.
No, I deleted that game from my memory.
Yeah. Who's Callaway? Who's the other guy?
I don't remember, man. I just remember
it was
them.
those 2 receivers, and seriously, it was just like 2-man routes all day, and just like bomb, bomb, bomb. So I think it's 3 now.
You're right. So yeah, at 3, they should feel that way now.
Yeah. I do remember. Brian Edwards had the best catch of his career with that one-handed grab, and it felt like Carolina had the momentum going into the half, and then Tennessee dominated the second half in that game. Then, like y'all said, you had the close game at home the year before, and then really a blowout this past season.
Yeah.
So Tennessee's a better program right now. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Kentucky's not, though. Kentucky never is. You know what? I give Mark Stoops so many props. I even said earlier this year that I think he might be pound for pound the second best coach in the SEC right now, and I still believe that. But he said some stuff earlier this summer that I was so annoyed that he's like so against expanding the SEC slate. I need Kentucky to be terrible again. Because he sounds like one of the biggest. He's supporting this like 7+1 thing, or the 1+7, just to avoid playing the extra conference game. And then I went back and looked at all of Kentucky's non-con games. It was even worse than Carolina's non-con games.
Protecting those W's.
Yeah, it made me like totally reconsider. So now I'm like even less inclined to give Kentucky the credit. In any case, that is sort of the pivotal game here, operating under the assumption that Carolina will in fact win the winnable games against Charlotte and against SC State. And most of you so far, as is par for the course for August 9th, feel like that Kentucky win. Now it's up to 71% of people think Carolina will be 3-0 in that stretch. I do want to circle back around to Kentucky, if you guys don't mind, because I think it's worth. I mean, we're talking about the game today, so we'll circle back to that. Want to get some of Wes's thoughts on what he saw at practice yesterday, and we'll talk a little more Carolina football here as the Gamecock Central Hour continues. 11:19 Tuesday morning. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Pearson, Fowler, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, Preston, Thorne here with you, talking a lot of Carolina football today. Got a poll question. Get Wes and Chris's thoughts from practice yesterday. Since after I left, I think they got the chance to sneak back in and watch the whole rest of practice, which, I'm a little bit salty about that, but I'm glad that y'all have the access at least. But in all seriousness, the poll question today: what will Carolina's record be in their second 3 games? Last week, you all told us that Carolina would be 2-1 in their first 3. Now, 71% of you think Carolina will be 3-0 against Charlotte, SC State, and Kentucky. So as we get things started, and Chris in the studio with us now, can you name all of the commonwealths, not states, in the United States?
Oh, boy. Kentucky.
Yep. I'll give you a ding.
Pennsylvania.
Oh, my gosh. Look at you, geography whiz.
There's one more.
Virginia.
Oh, my gosh. 3 for 4.
Oh, there's one more. That's 4 minus 3 is 1.
Geography
It's
guy.
man. Oh, man. I'm getting thrown off because in Louisiana, they have parishes instead of counties. One more. Commonwealth.
Do you want a hint?
Sure.
Bowberry biscuit, Cajun filet, pimento cheese, top of the Bowberry biscuit.
Like the Uva?
Okay.
So Massachusetts?
There you go.
Okay, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Yep.
All right, so I don't like Kentucky. I don't like Mark Stoops anymore because he's advocating for staying at 8 conference games and having a 1 permanent 7 rotating opponent. And I also don't like Kentucky because what is a Commonwealth and why?
I don't have any thoughts on that. I'm going to change the subject slightly. Did y'all see Mark Stoops, the Axl Rose pictures? Please tell me y'all saw those.
I did.
I didn't see this.
Okay.
There's I won't say a doppelganger because it's not that, but there was just a picture of Axl Rose who.
But it is Mark Stoops.
But it's Mark Stoops.
And multiple angles. It wasn't like, it's a little bit of a fluke. Anyway, I don't know the answer to your question, Pearson.
Well, I thought this was going to be one of those things like he dressed up for a recruit or something. But this was just like
he should.
If he public photo that just looked like him.
He's probably going to be like, I don't know if anybody asked him about it. Like, I feel like he would be way too serious football guy about it or whatever and be like, I don't have time to look at social media, or something.
He's got a little Muschamp vibe to him.
But if he owned it, like he would just show up at a press conference looking like Axl Rose.
Yes.
I'm going to pull it up and show you.
This is like the Jim McElwain shark lookalike thing.
Oh, dude.
That's amazing.
Don't Google that.
That was really don't
At
Google
work.
that.
Not safe for work.
How awkward was that when he...
Very strange.
Brutal.
I passed by the way, your question off. You were looking at me to answer it. I answered
you're
three
the
of the
geography
four.
guy here.
So
I feel like we're in order. I feel like, Preston, you're good with geography. Wes, I have no idea.
No.
No.
I'm not smart enough to be in this room
Do
right
you have
now.
any answers on this Commonwealth thing? I'm looking for reasons to dislike
idea.
Kentucky. Okay. All right. Well, how good is Kentucky going to be this year? Because Carolina fans always are ready to just count the Kentucky game as a win. Chris, this is a running joke between Preston and me. Carolina's just always going to beat Kentucky, except they never actually do. And everyone's always shocked. And then the next year, it's right back to, well, this year, Carolina will beat Kentucky. But I think this year, I think maybe lower on Kentucky than whatever consensus is around the SEC. What is your thought about the Wildcats right now?
Well, why are you lower on them? Like personnel losses or?
Yeah, so they lost both tackles. They also lost their center, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly high on Will Levis, and they're losing the best wide receiver the school has ever had in Wan'Dale Robinson. They also lost their offensive coordinator in Liam Cohen, who brought Kentucky into the 21st century. I think they lost a lot. They lost a couple of guys on defense, too. One of their safeties that was a senior and had been a good productive player for a while. I guess DeAndre Square is still there. He's a solid linebacker for him. I feel like they've lost a lot. I feel like they've punched above their weight a little bit. And mostly I think Will Levis is very overrated.
That's interesting on Levis. Lost Eric Wolford, too, by the way, to Alabama. Liam Cohen was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously. Levis, that's interesting. That might even qualify as like a bit of a hot take by you. Just because everybody's so high on Will Levis.
Yeah.
Like people in Kentucky love him. And then some, regional, national people really
I'd put
like
him like fifth or sixth in my SEC quarterback power ranking.
Okay. I mean, so I'm with you. I think this is potentially a bit of a step back year for them because of the coaching turnover and some of the personnel losses. I do think that, they've still recruited well. They're still going to be a well-coached team. When I kind of look just to not even the big picture, but just the South Carolina game, I still anticipate it's going to be a very difficult, fourth quarter type of game for South Carolina. But I do think, like looking at Kentucky, looking at Missouri, that's a couple games this year that South Carolina didn't win last year. We talked about this recently about, what are some games they could have stolen or won with better quarterback play. So Kentucky, Missouri, those firmly go into that bucket for me this year. I do think this is one of their better chances, to beat Kentucky, which has obviously been a thorn in their side the past few years.
What's Commonwealth Stadium like?
I've been. It's cool. It's not. Yeah. It doesn't feel necessarily. It doesn't feel like Williams-Brice. It doesn't feel like Athens. Like it doesn't feel that SEC vibe. But it is a really cool experience. What do you think, Preston?
No, I agree with that. It has the feeling of an NFL stadium just in the build because it's just a little bit smaller and tighter. Okay. Maybe like the Panthers Stadium or something like that. I remember, and this was years ago. I haven't been in a long time, but it seemed more modernized than the other stadiums at that time.
Interesting.
It just has a different architectural design than the other stadiums at the time. I remember going there. We played them at night. It was somehow seemed like we would always go there and it'd be really, really cold at the time. And then it's kind of cool just being around. You actually see all the horses in the stables going from the hotel to the stadium. And
That's
it's kind of like, oh, wow, it's actually Kentucky, the bluegrass. It's like, wow, this is what I imagine it would be like. So, yeah, I thought it was a cool stadium.
Was it the second easiest place to play, though?
Besides Vanderbilt?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, they weren't particularly loud. I mean, there were people there. It's not like there were empty stands, empty seats. I do remember one year we were there during Midnight Madness for basketball.
Oh, okay, cool.
So people obviously were more interested in that than playing
no
South
one was
Carolina.
there. They were all at Midnight Madness.
Right.
Yeah.
What, was Vanderbilt? So Vanderbilt was the easiest, or like?
Yeah, Vanderbilt's terrible.
How many high school atmospheres were harder for you to play in at Somerville than Vanderbilt?
All of them. Vanderbilt was really bad.
I just didn't know if it was like even harder because it's so eerily silent. You're just like, are we even playing? You know,
That's an interesting kind of idea. Like, it's hard because it's different.
there's no energy.
There's just zero energy.
Yeah, you're not getting anything from the crowd,
There's
so it's like you got to
nothing
pump yourself
it's
up.
It's really tough to play at Vanderbilt.
I remember best illustration I have of Vandy is several years ago, and it was a game. It was a game. Torrey Gurley had like a bunch of catches in the game, but we went to visit some friends in Nashville. We had this big group of people. I think we had 16 people, and so we went to go just find tickets. We didn't have tickets before we got there. And we went to go find them, and we got 16 tickets together, just easy. And it probably cost $16. You know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, they were the only team that didn't suffer in the attendance numbers during the COVID year.
Very true. Yeah, I would not put Kentucky in the same. They're not even in the same
They're like,
realm.
Okay.
Vandy's like, we could only have 1/3 capacity. They're like, we better find some more people.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Kentucky. Well, let me ask you to recruit Nix this. For a while, it felt like Mark Stoops was a great coach because he was getting more with less. But I feel like maybe quietly, compared to some of the other SEC teams in recent years, Kentucky has been doing more with more. Like, has the recruiting caught up to how consistently good Kentucky is?
I think the recruiting has jumped. I think there's still I would call them a blue collar program versus a blue chip program. Like they've been able to get some guy. It's kind of like South Carolina, honestly. Like you're never, if you're Kentucky, you're never going to just out recruit Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, probably not going to out recruit Florida or Tennessee either. So
Right.
you have to sort of have a good mix of getting some blue chip guys, but also developmental prospects that you're able to keep in the program that are willing to stick around a little while and kind of just work their way up and develop. Jalen Geiger, who some local folks may be familiar with from Spring Valley. He's a guy who's a 3-star kid. Kentucky recruited him. He's actually played quite a bit throughout his career as more of like a reserve role, has started some games too, I think. But I'm looking at Phil Steele right now as reference. He's listed in the starting lineup. So they've got a good combination. They've been able to use the portal as well. Obviously we talked about QB, but who's the kid?
Well, it was Wandale Robinson from Nebraska, Dare Rosenthal from LSU, and Will Levis from Penn State last year. Those are like the 3 best players on their team.
Yeah,
offensively.
They really used the portal last year. And I'm trying to remember. I think I have the right name. I'll tell you all the guy that I think they're going to miss against South Carolina. And Chris, you protect me if I'm off, get me if I'm off here.
Protect him.
Protect me from the people, because we will get some text about being wrong.
Yeah.
I got an email about being wrong on something after day 1, but and I wasn't even wrong on it. But anyway, is Marquand McCall the massive defensive tackle for them?
Oh, yeah.
And he's gone, right?
Let us verify this.
According to my quick research, he is gone. That guy was the difference maker in that game, because
no doubt.
He was just plugging up the middle, and South Carolina could not run the football. And if you look, South Carolina has struggled to run the football when they play these really good defensive tackles. And it's not even about their numbers. I just looked. He didn't have big numbers in that game. He just plugged up the middle, and they weren't able to get a push at all on the offensive side for South Carolina. He almost moved the line of scrimmage, it felt like. To me, he was a difference maker. It looks like they lost both of their defensive tackles from what I'm seeing. That could be, that's getting a little deep into the weeds, but that could be something to watch as far as that actual matchup.
Yeah, well, and that's why I ask about the recruiting, too, because, again, I think traditionally it's like Kentucky gets these guys, they coach them up, they develop them in the program, they eventually end up playing better than their recruiting ranking, but it seems like now they've been a little more consistent in the last couple of years. Now maybe if you're a Kentucky fan, you don't expect that drop-off. It's not like, in 2 years when this guy's ready. It's like, no, maybe you do have a 4-star guy ready to kind of plug and play here, more than you're at least used to with a Kentucky football program that traditionally didn't ever really do a whole lot. 803-404-6100. We'll circle back around to this as we continue to wrap up the poll question today. We'll officially get Chris's vote on what Carolina's record will be in those second three games. Also, several of you were screaming at your radio. A bunch of you have texted. Thank you, CJ, Craig, Roger, a bunch of other people. The other wide receiver for Tennessee that day that absolutely torched the Gamecocks along with Callaway was Juwan Jennings. You remember that, Chris? You would have gotten that. Oh, Preston and Wes.
Juwan Jennings was a dude.
Yes.
I mean,
Wes was talking about how he blocked out that big loss up in Knoxville, not the last one, but the one before that.
The Marquez North catch?
No. When they were running like max protect 2-man routes, scored like 100 points.
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't remember who, because it was Callaway, and then I couldn't remember the other receiver. But everyone has texted me and said that it was Jennings.
We were talking about the other day, we were talking about like the dark alley guys. Juwan Jennings is like number one in sport.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that dude is tough as they come.
All right.
Like
So I don't know who the promoter is, but Corey Boyd versus Juwan Jennings in a cage fight.
Shout out. I think maybe yesterday was Corey Boyd's birthday. So shout out to my guy, man.
Very good. I bet he's still like in insane shape.
Oh, yeah, 1,000% without touching the weight. one of my absolute favorite teammates.
There's a rumor, Preston, you could verify this for us, that Corey may be at the Gamecock Central preseason kickoff party on August 20th.
I haven't talked to him about it, but I really hope so.
Oh, wow.
He's been invited.
He's been invited?
Now I need to get on the phone with him. That's one of my favorite all-time top people.
All right. Well, if he is there, we'll get confirmation, and then y'all get to come meet him and hopefully not have any reason to brawl with him at the event, because it sounds like he would win.
Don't start none, won't be none.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. 803-404-6100. More on the poll question. Wes and Chris's thoughts on practice yesterday as well.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Pearson, Fowler, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell on the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
11:38 Tuesday morning. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Pearson, Preston, Chris, Wes, here with you in the Hernan Chevy Studios at 107.5 The Game. Plenty of Carolina football to get to in this hour. A few more results on the poll question, and we'll get Wes and Chris's thoughts on what they saw yesterday in practice. But you heard it there. Jim Penman doing the great voiceover for us. It's almost lunchtime. Preston's nibbling on some bread in there, and bread just makes me think about how delicious a Firehouse Sub is. Always. Nothing like a hot sandwich.
This bread is good, but it's almost just like an appetizer, like a teaser for some Firehouse bread. I can just visualize it. I can even taste it, Preston. The hot bread made to order, but if you don't want to wait in line, multiple options. Go online, firehousesubs.com, the rapid rescue ordering service. Skip the line. Get your hot sub, the Italian, the New York steamer, club sub, hook and ladder. I mean, a variety of sandwiches at Firehouse Subs. 12 locations around just the Midlands. If you're listening to us from somewhere else, odds are North Carolina, somewhere else in the state. Find another Firehouse Subs near you, firehousesubs.com, or download the Firehouse Subs app and order straight from there. We appreciate Larry Chandler and Firehouse Subs being a part of the show.
Want to get your guys' thoughts on practice yesterday. We were out there together. But first, we've been talking about Juwan Jennings a lot. Shadow of Death Valley says, my proud 49er guy, Juwan Jennings. That's right. Anyone want to spell Juwan Jennings for me? Because I had 3 different texts reminding me that Juwan Jennings was the guy in question, and all 3 of the texters spelled it differently.
I'll go with a conventional Juwan.
Okay. Wes, Chris, do you
I
know?
think I've got it.
Okay.
But I'm going to make a fool of myself.
Chris is
I don't
gonna
actually
pull it.
know the right answer. I'm asking because I've seen it spelled 4 different ways now here in the text line and on Twitter, so I'm just curious.
I'm going back and forth on which letters first.
It's like Isaiah. It's like
It's one of those. I think it's J. I'm losing it. Jauan.
Jauan.
Or it's Juaun or something like that.
I don't know. Isaiah always gives me a lot of trouble, though. I can't ever remember if it's AIA or IAI.
Here, I'm going to tell you. Yeah, the first one I said was actually right.
AUA?
Jauan.
Okay. Probably
It does
talking
have a
about Juwan
decided
Jennings more
Isaiah
today
feel
than-
to it.
Huh?
Yeah.
It has a decided Isaiah feel to
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's why I always appreciated Isaiah Thomas Zeke, because it's just AI. It's not IAI. And I don't have to worry about getting confused because it's just one of each. In any case, Juwan Jennings was not at practice yesterday. He hasn't played football in the SEC for a while. But y'all were at practice yesterday.
And so were you.
I was there with you, yeah. But I'm curious what you guys picked up on. Educate me on the things that I was supposed to be watching for that I missed at practice yesterday.
I think I'm going to go back to Nick Eamon-Worry, man. Y'all are going to get tired of me talking about him, but he's already working with the twos in that part of practice that we were able to see. We saw some 11 on 11. Looks the part, already working with the twos at safety. That's a great sign because they need guys to step up and play that backup safety spot, I think. Linebackers, I thought it was interesting. I've continued to hear some buzz about Mo Kaba, that he's taken a big step this offseason, but you want to see it play out in practice as well, right? He was working with the first-team group. Debo Williams was working with the first-team group. I think Shirai Green and Brad Johnson were working with the second group. That's a little bit flipped from what I would have expected. So I thought that was interesting. It is one, and we had some people sort of, why is this guy not with this group? It's one segment of one practice, and that really the only part of practice we were able to see. Mm-hmm. So this isn't necessarily the depth chart, y'all. And
it was August 8th.
Yeah, it's August 8th, and they're working a lot of guys in with the ones. But it was at least noteworthy that's kind of part of the conversation, at least. I think if Mo Kaba could take that step forward and be ready to do that, that would be a good sign for this team. Dylan Wanham was working with the ones at right tackle. I think he and Wanamaker are going to split time with the ones from what Adkins said in practice. But I think ultimately, if you're Carolina, you want your veteran guy. You won't want him to step up and win that spot. Rattler looks the part. Marshawn Lloyd with the ones at running back. Let's see. I guess that's all I got off the top of my head.
Well, I was just going to say, and this will be, I'll say this repeat again when the time comes, but I'll say for anybody that's listening to Wes and Chris, when we're talking about depth charts and things of that nature, or who's running with who, I would say maybe not pay attention to that until after the first scrimmage.
Yeah.
Then if some changes start to happen, if there's a flip-flop, then you might maybe put a little bit more stock into that. But for right now, it's probably not as important until after that first scrimmage.
Makes sense. I told Preston earlier that Nick Eamon-Worry jogged past me, and I was like, Wes, who's 21 on defense? And you were like, that's Nick Eamon-Worry, and my jaw hit the floor. I thought he was wearing the wrong number. I thought he should have been wearing like number 80 or like number 87 or something. That dude is a unit. That's incredible.
Look, he looks the part, right?
The other thing that stood out to me yesterday, and I'm blaming all three of you for this, I've heard that Spencer Rattler is small. I don't know if y'all specifically told me that, but just in general, I think that was kind of out in the world. And so I went into practice yesterday expecting him to be like, I don't know, like tiny. And I was like, oh, he's like normal size. But he's definitely smaller than Luke and Colton. But it was like, you remember that movie La La Land?
Stop.
I don't know how much the crossover for the La La Land listeners and 107.5 listeners are. But I appreciate the effort.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that people were excited about that movie. And then everyone was like, wait, no, it's really overrated. And I saw it when everyone said it was overrated, so then I liked it. So everyone's been saying Spencer was small, so I went in thinking he was going to be small. And I'm like, oh, no, he looks normal.
Yeah, so my word was slight. And I didn't mean that, for instance, when you look at Luke, Luke is an impressive-looking figure. You know, he has, like, broad shoulders, and it sort of looks like he's just built to run. Same thing, and I said with Colton, he looks like a statuesque, and he has that long, pretty hair also, but... You know, he's like statuesque back there. He's just a tall quarterback. I don't know what you think of a quarterback, sort of seeing his body. And that's why I keep coming back to the Ferrari metaphor. Like, Spencer's he's not small by any means, but just his build is just a little bit smaller than the other guys, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
is that the impression you got?
Yeah. And it was noticeable. I was like, oh, yeah, like because he was standing right next to those guys during like the stretch period. Right? I was like, oh, he is. But also, man, like, he threw a 5-yard slant pass to not even a real wide receiver. It was the best thing I've ever seen in my life. It was amazing. I'm just trying to get Carolina fans excited, huh?
He does rip it, though. Like,
it does, seriously. Like, in all seriousness, I mean, like, I was just watching him, like, flick little passes out into the flat. Like, they were really just, like, throwing swing routes to running backs. And there was something, like, watching all the other quarterbacks throw it, I was like, man, that is just so smooth. He's throwing a swing route, and I'm like, that's smooth.
So when we first looked at Spencer Rattler in the spring, people were like, well, how's he look? How's he look? How's he look? And I'm like, the ball just comes out of his hand differently. And then I'm like, well, do I sound stupid saying that? Like, is that just a cliche that is that just like a go-to cliche? And I know if there's anybody on the planet that will call somebody out for something like that, it's Pearson behind the glass. Yeah. So, Pearson, when he throws the football, again, against air on an August 8th, you said, practice, does the ball come out of his hand different than most?
Seemed to. And I didn't even notice it watching him, but then watching the other quarterbacks rotate in, I'm like, oh, they don't throw like he does. So, I think Carolina's going 12-0.
That's the thing. We've probably already mentioned it on the show many times, but Wes and I talk about that often. Like, it's almost, it doesn't make sense almost how Spencer can spin the ball like that because, like, he doesn't look like Josh Allen, you know? He's not this huge guy. And he's bulked up since he got here, as has been pointed out. He's gotten bigger. But, like, he could just flick his wrist and he can just spin it. I mean, distance, accuracy, the zip on the ball, it is different.
It's a true gyrating of the pigskin.
Steven Garcia term?
Yeah.
There you go.
That's like what I imagine that was intended to mean, though. But it was cool. It was cool. Anything else you guys picked out of practice yesterday that I missed? Since y'all are the keen observers here.
You know, the segment we saw some very quick, fast-paced, and that was, 3 or 4 minutes where we got to see, like, kind of a depth chart preview, some very quick plays being run, but a lot of it was individual work and things like that. I did notice, there's one thing that stood out, TJ Sanders. You know, he's a guy that was talked about a lot in the spring, young guy from the Palmetto State, and he looks great physically. I noticed a couple plays back-to-back, he just completely blew up a play. I think he was working against some freshman O-linemen as well and kind of welcomed them. But he blew up a pass play and blew up a run play just back-to-back. So, you know, he's a guy that I think you continue to – we could see him some this year, but I think you file him away for the future as by the time he's a junior, you know, could be a really, really good player. He's going to have some guys in front of him this season.
Cool. Very good. All right. That's Wes and Chris's practice thoughts. You can catch those on Gamecock Central, too. In the aftermath of any practices that we do get a chance to watch. 803-404-6100. Get us on Twitter, too, at Coach P Tweets, at Pearson Fowler, at Wes Mitchell GC, at GC Chris Clark. Wrap things up. A few more thoughts from practice, a few more thoughts on the poll question next.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell. On the home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
All right, just a couple minutes left here on the Extra Point. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with Wes and Chris. Preston here, too, in the Herndon Chevy Studios. I guess we'll get some final votes from you guys. The poll question has officially ended. The people have spoken as to what they think Carolina's record will be in their second 3 games, Charlotte, SC State, Kentucky. And for what it's worth, the least interesting for the sake of poll questions and lively debates, because you're pretty much choosing between 2-1 or 3-0. We'll start with Chris. Let's start with you, Chris, because yesterday Wes got mad at me for starting with him on something. I don't know what you're doing over there. Can't see you, so who knows?
Not my fault.
Chris, what's Carolina's record going to be in those 3 games? Charlotte, SC State, at Kentucky.
3-0.
Coach B.
This is the year. 3-0.
Wes.
I'm going the 2-1 until you show me different. Bro.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, that is totally fair. SC State is just coming off the Celebration Bowl win. Like, you can't count them out. 69% of people say 3-0. 25% of people agree with Wes, 2-1 with the loss to SC State. 3% of people say 1-2, and 3% of people that voted on the poll today are Clemson fans.
But there's really no reason why those 69% feel like we are going to be 3-0, right? It's a delusion.
Well,
right?
No, it could just be they were compelled by Wes pointing out they are missing their defensive tackles.
8 out of 9 years? Do I have that correct?
Or 7 out of 8, I think.
Gee.
Yeah. But how many of those should Carolina have?
We are not going into that.
No. Do y'all remember what you cast your vote for last week for the first 3 games? Kind of trying to keep track of where everybody thinks the season's going to stand at the open week.
I think I went 2-1.
You went 2-1?
I hope for 2-1.
Okay. That's fair. That counts.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Suppose I said 2-1.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's we're talking 4-2, 5-0 going into the open
We are
week.
some homers.
Huh?
We're some homers.
You can speak for yourself. I think Carolina's 0-6 at this point. No, I don't know. Yeah, I haven't cast a vote. Thank you guys for not making me decide on that.
Ooh, that was smooth, Pearson. I like.
Yeah. I mean, not that anyone needs any other fodder to hold against me in terms of the things that I say on this radio station. But we'll keep this up next Tuesday. Be on the lookout for a poll question about the third 3 games and so on and so forth until we get all the way to the season. Carolina offensive players did speak today. We'll have some of that sound for you throughout the course of the afternoon today and more on the show tomorrow. But that'll do it for us here today. Appreciate you all listening, being a part of the show as always, and the halftime show is coming up next.